Hey, this is Emmy Thomas, and I'm here with Buddha. And I'm going to ask Buddha the same question I ask everyone, which is, Buddha, what is it like to be you?
It's complicated. I I don't typically think about myself very much. It just kind of comes out, and I try not to describe myself very much. Uh, Maybe like a nebulous form that has a body. I don't I don't I don't tend to think about myself this much, and it provides me with some anxiety with this question. I don't like talking about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I relate to that a little bit. The whatever you said, amorphous form that inhabits a body. That's how I
Yeah,
used to feel about myself. Kind of like a cipher was a word. I think
yeah,
I read it in Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard, where he
hmm
talked about like people that don't kind of have they're kind of like like a gas that can or a liquid that can take
yeah.
whatever form that it's placed in.
True. I am definitely myself. I'm very formed, but it's in potential. The limitation in itself is the body and its descriptive adjectives. You could say I have red hair. I'm a little bit chubby. You know, I, I'm wordy. I'm 40 years old. I'm married. I have friends. I work. I work a lot. Uh, yeah, lots of things. It's not that I have a fragile ego. It's just that I don't really like attention on me because it makes me nervous.
Yeah, I was the same way too. I guess I am still like a little bit that way. Like I really enjoyed having my sister and cousin have their birthdays right next to mine because every single year we would celebrate our birthdays together. And so I was just part of a throuple, like I was not,
Sure.
it wasn't like my
Right.
birthday. I was
hmm
just part of this triumvirate.
Yeah. I think under situations like that, and it doesn't happen very often, but there was an instance in which I had a birthday party, and my brother, who is a vulnerable narcissist, uh, brought up the fact that I abused him as a child, and it made me dissociate to the point where I could feel myself leaving my body, and it was horrible because I just blew out my birthday cake. So there's instances like this where sometimes there's dissociation.
Was that like a birthday party as an adult or as a child that you had?
As an adult, actually.
Oh, okay. And you said
It's
you had just blown out your birthday cake. Do you mean like the candles? Or do
yeah.
you? Hmm.
Yeah, and because the attention wasn't on him,
Oh,
he needed to make it about himself,
I
and
see.
I was completely unaware of that, and I just really wanted to spend time with my family because it was so broken. I was very thankful that my grandfather and my brothers and my wife were all there together, and
Yeah.
it was pretty traumatizing for me.
Yeah, that sounds like really shitty to do.
Yeah, I know, but I forgive him because I don't think he knows any other way to get attention.
Okay, so you said he's a what type of narcissist?
Vulnerable narcissist.
And I'm
So
not familiar with that term.
that's that's when someone needs to make things about themselves, like you don't love me because I'm this or blah 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 blah, and they draw the energy back on themselves, like or you did this and blah 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 blah. So it's just making the situation about them rather than someone else because they feel threatened. You're receiving this amount of attention, and I don't think you deserve it because you didn't give me any attention, and I'm gonna take it.
Huh. Man, I wonder what like psychologically is happening there. Like as someone kind of like you who has never uh really enjoyed attention. I guess I have used attention for
It's
various
because I got my
things.
shit together and he didn't get his shit together yet. I have a wife, I have a house, I have a steady job in which I never call out, and this is the first time I've gotten sick and not called out, but for fucking years. Like I never call out. Like I'm very loyal and dependable. And he's not. So God love him, but he's just not. So I think he could tell in that instance that I was reaping the rewards of my diligence, and he was suffering because he just isn't.
Yeah. I've kind of seen like a trend on like TikTok recently and other things where people like they own the fact that they can't get their shit together, but they kind of just say things like, I haven't been able to learn to make capitalism work for me. Have you like been exposed to that kind of like people saying that? Is that what your brother does or, you know?
No, he's not. It's not that he's not intelligent, but his mindset is pretty limited. He's probably on the spectrum as well, and he's not focused on it like that. So long story short, our entire family had undergone a great deal of abuse from and neglect from our mother and father, and he was the brunt of the abuse, more so than me, and he uh, essentially was taken as a ward by my grandparents, and basically, baby bird fed up until um, both of my grandparents died. So he never had any real adulting experience.
Hmm. I know of another individual where that's similar thing. His parents were drug addicts. He was raised by his grandparents who like doted on him like crazy, and now he really struggles in adulthood, and it's unfortunate to see.
Yeah, his strategy at this point is that of a grifter, where he finds semi-attractive women of his age and gets them to take out loans, um, uh, and then he just dumps them.
Hmm. So he gets the cash, and then it's just like, see ya.
Yeah, and then they're
Hmm.
stuck with this loan.
Are these the type of women that would like, go after him later for it? Like, oh,
Um,
you,
no, he had one psychopath earlier, and God, you could see it in her eyes. And no, he got smarter about it. Now he just goes for very lonely, normal women who have steady jobs, and still feel for him afterward.
okay. So they're still kind of hoping that he's going to come back and
Yeah, and change. And sometimes they call us looking for information about him, and I'm just and I've tried my best, and I'm tried not to be a dick about it, but he has this ritual where he'll call me up on the phone when he gets his new girlfriend. He'll want to show her off, and I try my best not to try to warn her off immediately.
right.
It's like I want to be nice, and it's like, well, maybe he'll get his shit together, or maybe she'll help fix him, but it just never happens. And he's I still love him. I still think he's great. But yeah, it's tough. Like, I'm 40, he's 30 something, and I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. But at least he's not exhibiting risky behaviors like drug use or unsafe sexual activities and all that stuff. It's just grifting, and it's
Yeah.
still bad.
Do you think he kind of understands when he starts like a new girlfriend? Is he kind of like, oh, this is the one I'm going to get married? Or do you think he knows it's a grift and he's like, I just have to get the money or something?
I think it's impulsive.
Okay.
I don't think he has any other idea. He's been doing this for decades now. I don't know if he understands any other thing. He's a type of vulnerable. Well, a narcissist is all about their image. So he's got a lot of social media profiles, and he's always telling people how happy he is, and posts his new cars that he gets from these women, usually sports cars. And yeah, it's just the same old, same old.
It's interesting because my dad, whom I kind of consider a narcissist, you can tell he's having a really bad day when he says the following phrase. I'm loving life.
Yeah. Yo, that is so similar. My brother says, I'm having fun.
And you're just like, well, uh-oh, he just said I'm loving life. So like, who knows what's going to
Yeah.
go down? Like he's spiraling
Yeah.
emotionally inside.
Right. Yeah.
I'm having fun. Hilarious. So he doesn't have a
Yeah.
job. He's never had a job. Did you say he's on the spectrum?
No,
He's on the autism spectrum?
listen, so I don't think he was truly diagnosed, but it's kind of apparent. You know, I'm pretty sure my father was. I'm pretty sure I am. I'm pretty sure my other brother is. It's all kind of there. Like sensory overload, stereotypy, niche interests, poor eye contact, all types of stuff like that. It's obvious, like, but no, I'm not diagnosed ASPD. No, I'm not diagnosed autism. We grew up very poor, and we didn't have a lot of medical care, so we didn't have those resources. So but it's just kind of obvious, and I'm not a doctor. No, I didn't finish university. I'm a 4.0 GPA dropout. The bipolar would make it so the mania would straight A's, but as soon as I got to summer break, I'd hit the wall and I couldn't return back to school because of the momentum. Like, oh, here I am doing all this work. Come summer break, I'm not doing shit. So then when I come back to the school time, it's just like, well, fuck, now I have to do all this stuff all over again. I'd be like double majoring, all that type of stuff, and I still test very well. But anyway, tangents flying. I think it's an effect of this COVID that I got going on, this disorganized thought pattern.
Yes, for me, for like four weeks or even months after, I was like,
I'm
I forgot
sorry.
where I was going with this.
I'm really sorry.
No problem at all. So did you say you experienced kind of a bipolar mania and depression kind of cycle?
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I'm diagnosed. Well, I don't have any adult diagnoses. I diagnoses. I only have childhood diagnoses. But they were done like by the school psychologist or whatever. So it was PDD-NOS and which is, I guess, spectrum, and then bipolar. But I did go to the hospital for treatment for the bipolar due to suicidal ideation and attempts as a child. Uh, but yeah, okay, I'm losing it again. I'm getting hot.
Oh, okay. So you said PDD-NOS. What does that stand for? Do you remember?
Sure, pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. Basically, it
Okay.
means we don't fucking know autism.
Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. Interesting. And then were you medicated for bipolar, the diagnosis?
Yeah, yeah. Zoloft, Wellbutrin, Paxil. Paxil was the worst. Paxil gave me out of body experiences, which I had 3 points of consciousness. It was fucking awful.
What does that mean?
So I remember one time I decided to take myself off Paxil when I was a teen, and I went cold turkey for 2 days. Then I remember it was like 3 a.m. I was staring at my alarm clock while I was facing forward in my bed, but my body wouldn't move, and I had 3 points of conscious reference. Where one, I was in my bed. Two, I was stuck in the corner of the wall and couldn't move, and three, I was on the ground spiraling in pain while a woman stared at me with holding a chicken. It was
Okay.
it was really fucked up. So, but no, I don't often exhibit signs of psychosis, and Paxil definitely gave me that.
And it's interesting that you kind of say this because have you heard about Lindsay Clancy? I think she was on. She killed her three kids just
Mhm.
recently, like a couple of weeks ago, and people think it
Wow.
was psychosis, and they think it was postpartum psychosis. like
Wow.
postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis. But
Hmm.
psychosis is really crazy. Like kind of
Yeah.
reading about stuff, and I guess she had told her husband like a man's voice in her head told her this was her one opportunity to do it, and so that's why she
Mm.
did it.
Wow.
So is
Was
that
it,
the
was
but
she
that
on any
was
type of medications or anything? Like,
Yeah, she had been, and she said that the only thing that worked was Ativan to make her feel like herself. But I
okay.
forget what you'd have to kind of like. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
People listening,
Got
if
it.
they're listening, can look it
Sure.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
All
yeah,
right.
it's crazy. Medications that seem to have like little effect on some people can seem to like react with other people in such a different way too.
Mm. Yeah. I think it all has to do with the neurotype of the individual. Just like with illicit drugs and stuff. And if we talk about marijuana, how it's basically almost pretty much safe for neurotypicals, but if anyone has like latent schizophrenia,
Oh,
marijuana can induce psychosis, and it could be permanent afterward.
yes.
After,
I
yeah,
heard about this. I heard about like some teenager who, yeah, did you say latent schizophrenia?
yeah,
And so, yeah, it hadn't like kind of kicked in yet or something. And then like
yeah,
smoked pot and then was kind of like his brain was cooked afterwards, forever
yeah,
after.
yeah. So I'm not someone who ever recommends marijuana to anyone because I don't know their neurotype. It can be
Right.
very dangerous.
Huh. That's interesting. That makes sense too. It is kind of weird how people have like normalized marijuana to,
No, it could be
like,
dangerous.
yeah. I wonder what's going on there, like how it interacts with the schizophrenia to kind of,
I imagine it connects more neural pathways
oh,
to a point where like maybe synesthetic stimuli starts happening where
huh.
the over sensory
Yeah, like the numbers have colors.
yeah, that type of
Yeah,
stuff, like it just connects a lot of things that maybe aren't often connected.
that's interesting. The synesthesia in general is interesting for me. I have a friend who has it just a little bit, like the numbers have colors and personalities.
Wow, personalities.
Yeah, like three is happy or something, seven sad or whatever.
Wow.
That would be like kind of why. Like why, how does your brain, and she's super
But
smart. She's like smarter than I am, like by a lot.
yeah.
Like
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, I didn't mean that way. I'm saying I understand what you're saying.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, but is it because she's experienced these types of emotions during those periods of reference where she sees the number? Is it some type of yeah, correlation of experience?
I should ask her. It's kind of funny because I never did kind of follow up. I would just be like, "Oh, that's weird," and then, kind of move on.
Hmm.
Because you wonder, because numbers are not, colors are something that is like
Yeah,
you perceive when you're a baby, right? If you're
sure.
not colorblind, but like numbers are something that you have to kind of learn. Like even what the symbol means or what is it or something. So it's weird that she
Yeah,
even associates just, not with letters, just with numbers. That's what makes
yeah.
it seem like a real puzzler to me, because what?
Yeah, so now you said before that you wanted to get into schizoid or schizotypal thinking.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you seem to have some understanding of the metaphysical, or uh, somehow you have intuition as well. Speaking about numbers, are you familiar with numerology?
Just a little bit. I have a cousin who posts on Instagram about like certain numbers, and maybe have like read about Kabbalah when
Hmm.
Madonna was into Kabbalah and stuff, but not
Yeah,
not that much.
yeah. Okay. It's interesting. Maybe there's some type of correlation. If I can give you some reference to this, if you can talk to your friend.
Okay.
But I'll give you the one through or 0 through 9 references of numerology. I have some experience with Hermetic Kabbalah, grimoires, Satanism, paganism, things like that. So 0 itself is the void, so the nothingness. or the cosmic egg, the mother, the thing that comes before the universe. One is the start, or the I, or the self. So self is usually one. Two is dichotomy or conflict. Usually two, when two things are together, there's usually conflict. Or two, or male, female, black, white, usually like conflict or passion, something like that. Three is usually balance, or Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, electron, neutron, proton, things like this. Three is usually balance. Four is the divine masculine, or to seek. The penis seeks. It goes toward things. So five is the divine femininity, which attracts. So the femininity pulls toward, takes. The male gives, the female takes. Six is the materialism, or matter, things that you can hold and touch. Seven is energy, or things that are intangible, forces, things that we can't see or hear or sense. Eight is the systems that make up the rest. Like everything together creates the system that works. Eight is the system of everything. Nine is usually the transitional point, or the end, or death. And nine transitions back to one.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to think of like the masculine as being something that seeks and the feminine as being something that attracts. And now that you're kind of saying this, it makes sense. Like I thought of like numbers, numbers have to be something that's taught, but like a baby would intuit numbers. Like a baby understands the difference between 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about like 2 and kind of like this opposition, because religiously, like Mormon theology is very into, there's like a Mormon scripture that says there must be opposition in all things, because without dark, there's no lightness, kind of, etc. And so I think often and Mormon theology is also that gender is an eternal construct. That gender's not just like some weird kind of accident. And I wonder if it's not just like the same way that we can't really have any like language or like encode any kind of information without at least 2. That like choosing the binary somehow like allows there to be like this distinction and separation that organizes the universe.
Yeah. Well, the oscillation of the binary node is what's responsible for waveforms in itself, which the particle it oscillates in between this universe and the next one, and then creates the pattern of the sine wave for colors and sounds and all types of things. And it's just an intrinsic. I do a lot of coding, and I've created sound engines using older technology and binary, beeper engines, things like that, just so I can kind of study the universe in itself and kind of pay homage to how it works in a spiritual way.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I took a physics class, acoustics of music and speech class in my undergrad.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It was like, super fascinating because, I was a music major. So here I am like learning about music, but then to learn like what it actually is. Yeah, like here's a kind of a fun fact for you is that like, as you study music and stuff, you start to like learn to recognize the sounds of different instruments, right? Oh, that's like a contrabassoon or that's a, whatever else it is.
The timbres.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the timbres, the timbres. Yeah. So but they did a study. If you take off the attack, you basically can't tell the difference between a trumpet and a clarinet. Like it's very difficult to tell.
ASDR, yeah, I got you. Yeah. I know how to create my own sound engines from assembly language. Yeah.
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 And another interesting fact is when they did, and maybe you already know this one, when they were trying to make string synthesizers. at first,
Hmm.
synthesizers that sounded like authentic string sounds, like violins. They were too, they didn't sound like strings, and it took them a while to
Huh.
realize that they had to layer, not just layer the sounds,
That's
but
so
also
cool.
distort them. So
Yeah.
one's starting a little bit later, one's a little bit out of tune, because
Hmm.
that's what an
Yeah.
actual orchestra sounds like. That's the
Yeah.
sense of hearing strings, is they're all playing a
Hmm.
little bit differently, but
Yeah.
together.
That's my okay. This is we're gonna get back into schizoid. I promise. I haven't
No
forgot.
problem, yeah.
So, but yeah, I have a fondness for broken and cheap and neglected sound chips, especially the ones designed by the Atari Corporation, like the 2600 sound chip or things like that, and they were only designed to create sounds and be cheap. And I've found, or a lot of people within the music community have found ways of making them sound good, or use them as they are, even how broken they are. Where like the Atari 2600 chip is basically a distortion engine which has a divisor by 30. So all frequencies are based upon the initial frequency divided by 30. So you're not going to get a full, 12 tet, concert tuning. You're just going to get a bunch of shit. So I use methods of like dithering the two frequencies together to fool the ear to make it sound like I'm playing the right note, and yeah, things like that. And uh, for a while in my early 30s and late 20s, I was in something called the demo scene groups, where we took older computers and created visual art pieces, or audio visual art pieces with these computers, so that we could push them and exploit them as far as they could go, to see how they could stand up to modern technology. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool. But so schizoid. Um, so you're familiar that within the cluster A spectrum, that schizoids are people that kind of lack empathy. They just like the cluster B spectrum. And I try to find, I seem to find that there's some correlation in between them. Maybe I have tendencies of schizoid. I'm pretty literal. I used to struggle with social interaction. I don't anymore. I'm extremely charismatic and I have lots of friends. But whatchamacallit, the schizoid kind of goes into fantasy, where they are either a hero or a villain. And if someone's had ASPD for a while, that guilt from harming people or being misunderstood is going to build up, and you're going to want to dive into your super ego, and you're going to either be that villain that everyone thinks you are, or you're going to try to be a hero and overcome it. And that's kind of what the schizoid does, is they retreat to their own land of fantasy, try to be literal so that their communication is not misunderstood. If I'm as literal as possible, I'm going to try my best to talk to you in a way that you know who I am and you understand what I'm talking about, so that there's no misunderstanding of my intentions, or who I am. Uh, but that kind of backfires because sometimes it comes off as pompous or robotic. So it's a double edged sword in that instance. But I've noticed that, and obviously you frequent Discord as well. I've seen some comorbid individuals who have either schizoid and ASPD, or schizoid and narcissist personality disorder, and I've noticed that certain schizoids get into this mask, or quote LARP, where they act as a stronger individual. They have it on their profile pic of a strong person, or and they have a character that they don't break, and they tend to only break that character once you exhibit vulnerability, and you aren't combating them, and you aren't contesting their character, or
Mm-hmm.
they just kind of drop it. And it doesn't happen all that often, but it must be exhausting to act out as a character on a regular basis just to interact with another human being. It must be completely exhausting.
Yes. And I do feel like, so there's like a lot of things that you've said there. So yes, I do think like as somebody who has masked, primarily through most of my life, that it is exhausting. That was like, I guess, a primary reason for wanting to not mask anymore. But I think
Yeah.
it's so interesting what you said. I never have really thought about this or heard this before. Way at the beginning, you said that the psychopaths have, like you said, guilt, so built up, I guess, kind of, you know, some sort of
Yeah.
angst about,
I've harmed so many people. I've harmed so many people.
yeah. And
It's
so just
it's
kind of
it's it,
recognizing that fact you said builds up to where, it's like you feel like, well, I must be the villain. And so now I'm just going to play the villain, like
exactly.
embrace it.
Hmm.
So you've experienced that too?
I call it villain complex. Yeah, just like
Okay.
there's God complex or hero complex or whatever. I call it villain. I don't know if there's a villain complex, but that's what I call it.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard it called, but I have had so many experiences. I guess I kind of used to think of it as like, I would call it kind of like a schism theory that I
Yeah.
had, where you're constantly like trying to mask and pretend to be like this normal, like good person, the person that people want to, like I had a, like in college, I was like, I had a goal to be like the perfect friend, like I had kind of
Hmm.
like not been interested in friendships until then. And because I
Yeah.
hadn't been interested in them, I kind of treated people a little bit callously, not like not as bad as I would treat them when I was obsessed with them or focused on them,
Yeah.
but because I wasn't focused on them at all, or kind of they weren't on my radar very much at all, then I would treat them with like indifference a lot. But then in
Sure.
college, I was like, I should stop doing this. I should start being a better friend. And so that was worse, right? Because now I'm
Oh,
focused.
I bet that was so. I bet that was so difficult because did you even understand what friendship was?
No,
Right.
no. And so I was like learning from, like, I don't know, Disney films like Freaky Friday or
Yeah.
like
Right.
whatever. Just
Yeah.
kind of like weird concepts, 90s television.
This is so fucked up. But I learned social skills through dating simulator games when I was a teenager.
Okay.
You know. Yeah. It worked. It really worked. I started getting girlfriends like regularly. It was good. Yeah. What do they call it?
I didn't even realize it was a
Social
game.
stories. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. It was a good social story. It helped me learn. You know, even if it was slightly perverted, it helped me learn what relationships were, and how people connect and what people are looking for, what's appropriate versus inappropriate. So without those, and I was also cared for by my grandparents, and they gave me unconditional love. So I could throw them on the ground. I could steal. I could set fires. I could do anything, and they still love me the same.
Wow.
But without them, I probably wouldn't have any empathy whatsoever. And I know it takes a lot of patience.
Yeah. So, this idea of like the villain thing, then, so I'd pretend to be like a good friend, schism, right? So I'd be like
Yeah.
way over here, kind of like a rubber band, and then the rubber band would snap. And then I'd go
Oof.
back to the opposite extreme and be like,
Yeah.
oh, you don't think I'm a good friend, even though I put in like 100% of my attention and effort into this?
Yeah.
Fine, I'll show you what a bad friend is. You think I'm bad? I'll show
Right.
you bad.
Yeah, ASPDs try not to consider themselves as within the borderline organization where we also split time to time, and that once we try to be vulnerable, then we have fragile ego.
Hmm. That's interesting because it also like would explain like my experience with gray rage, which is that I only experience gray rage when I'm trying to do the right thing in a particular
Yeah,
situation, and then somebody calls me out and says I've done a bad thing. Then I'm
yeah,
like,
that
no,
hurts.
yeah,
That really hurts. Like
yeah,
you're really trying your best, and it hurts.
Yeah, then I get so angry because I just think, like, what's the point of trying to do anything if nobody appreciates it and I still get labeled bad?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you.
I know, yeah, I talk about it in the book. One time it happened and was, like it's really the only times that I feel like rage that's like a violent rage, me
Yeah.
personally, and uh it comes like so quickly and it's so impulsive. Like it's like my very most impulsive. Like I do have very
Yeah.
little, it feels like control. But I
Hmm.
wonder, I really wish that somebody would kind of like explore this like idea, like why does it like that is so it hurts and you just feel like shutting down completely. And then like
Yeah.
in the shutting down completely, it's like you just feel like nothing matters, maybe. Is that what
Yeah.
leads to the idea of
That's
violence?
the splitting. Yeah, that's the splitting. Yeah. So I got to kill it all the way. I got to push it all the way. Yeah, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and this person who kind of like started the chaos, they deserve,
Hmm.
most of the negativity that's going to come from it. There's like a
Yeah.
very big kind of like sense of like lack of responsibility, which isn't
Hmm.
accurate. Obviously you're still you, you're still, like even if you're amorphous, whatever, just
Hmm.
in like a body, you
Hmm.
still could kind of like intercede or something, but it's like you just don't have like the will. But I think like the thing with the gray rage is like I've stopped gray raging ever since like I just stopped masking. And so it makes me
Hmm.
kind of think that some of this stuff just might come from, like you're white knuckling so hard to mask all the time
Yeah.
that you don't learn, just how to do it the right way. You're just pretending
Yeah.
to do it the right way with the masking. And
Well, I'm
then,
currently masking right now. I'm trying my hardest not to provide you praise because I want to give you respect. This is your channel. I have an extensive experience with applied behavior analysis,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to say I'm very proud of you for admitting all these things to me.
Oh,
So and that's what I would normally say if someone's being vulnerable like that when it's difficult to be. So
but is that the masking or is the masking the praise is not masking. You want to
no,
praise me.
I do want to praise, but I also know that this is not my show, and I
Oh,
don't want to. I don't want
no,
to. Okay,
don't
all right.
mask if you don't want to. I always want to accept
Right,
people however they are.
yeah. All right. Okay.
I have no
Uh,
expectations of you. Like, don't mask.
okay.
If
Okay.
it was praise or even not praise,
Well,
like,
some people are afraid of intimacy in that way. I know ASPD people are generally not because it's essentially all they crave in their life is that they want
yes,
safety. They want safety and intimacy.
I
You know,
agree.
so
I
you know,
agree.
you
And I
know,
think this is like a good point to kind of tease out a little bit because like people wonder why would you be antisocial personality disorder and crave intimacy? Like, like why would you still be in relationships if you don't seem to care or whatever? But it's like, yeah, intimacy is why, I was just telling a friend yesterday, I was like, I have loved being so smitten by you, for the
hmm,
past plus 15 plus years, a friend
hmm,
it's not at all sexual, but
yeah,
there's just like such an energy and vibe. And I've just, because I told her it's
hmm,
in experiencing my depth of feelings for you, I experience the depth of my feeling capacity, like you
yeah.
kind of push me to the limits in a way. And I said, I feel like I have used you because of that, and I've
It's your yeah
mistreated
your
you.
guilt. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you like it's I guess it's what you need to. I'm sorry for saying you need to, but maybe this is something that processing could help because it's not as if you need to deserve something in order to receive it.
Yeah.
You get it, so you take it. It was given to you. Just like if we want to go back into schizoid or schizotypal, and I believe in God. I don't necessarily believe. Oh, I'm Satanist by trade. I'm anti Abrahamic, but I'm theist. I do believe in God, and I do believe God is a loving entity. I don't believe God is Jehovah or anything like that. God is the collection of everything. I'm God. You're God. The computer's God. Everything's God. But in this instance, if you're given something, it's a disrespect not to receive it. If it was intended for you, take it. If your friend is giving you these things, then it's essential for you to take them because you're meant to be given them. You didn't ask for it. You didn't pay for it. So just take it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like what you say about God is interesting because I just heard a phrase recently that I thought was very cool and accurate. That love is a spiritual technology, and I thought, man,
Oh,
that's so true because like love is a lot of things, but it does a lot of things. It's like a cool
yeah,
technology that you can use to calm yourself down, to feel at peace,
yeah.
to whatever else. But it was interesting because exactly kind of as you say, as you're intuiting when I was talking to my friend about this, I was kind of feeling like, weird for having used her, but also kind of like realizing I still feel this way. I still feel like one of the main reasons that I love her as a person is because
Yeah.
I feel so intensely about her and it
Yeah.
feels good to
It
feel
feels
so
nice.
intensely
Yeah.
about her.
Yeah. Like I brought my friend into your channel, Dakota. She is a diagnosed, ASPD, and it's completely apparent. And what I kind of like about her and ASPDs in general is the fact that they have so much lost innocence. If you grow up without any type of innocence, and you need to embrace that. If she's acting childlike or she's laughing or she's playing, embrace that childlike nature.
Yeah.
You have to reclaim your innocence. You have to reclaim your childhood. Really be who you wanted to be. And if you're immature, then it just maybe takes a little bit longer than the other person. You don't have to be ashamed for enjoying your newfound childhood experiences as an adult.
Yes. It's funny because like I go to Disneyland like regularly, have passes or something, love to like have fun and stuff. And then actually this friend's husband, like I was talking to him about my legal nonprofit. And so I played for him like I kind of explained like how does it work and then played for him like the voicemail recording or whatever that explains like your legal rights when you're being pulled over by law enforcement. And
Mhm.
he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like your voice, except you're a professional voice, like a professional version of you." And I realize he always sees me in this childlike state. It's because whenever I'm like seeing them, it's we're doing something fun and it's whatever. He never has like seen me, talk like a lawyer.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like we have to embrace this. We have to find safety in it. We have to find people on a dialectical basis that support it for us.
Yeah.
We need to have company that recognize our innocence.
Yes. Yeah, it is so interesting. And I feel like that is like one thing when we talked about like psychopaths crave safety and they crave intimacy. Like I think that is what characterizes this intimacy is that somebody sees us for the innocence that like nobody else really sees us for.
Yeah, yeah. And I try to provide that to certain people. This is me being cold and manipulative, but I often think that ASPDs are some of the easiest people to work with because you just need to show them a little bit of love and they're extremely loyal.
Mhm. And you find that to be true of yourself too. Do
Yeah,
you? Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. Just show me a little bit of love and I'm there for you forever.
It is weird though, because kind of getting back just a little bit more to the conversation I had with my friend, she said, and what you said about just like receive it. She said this that she said, I don't know why you love me so much. I don't know why you're so smitten with me, but
Hmm.
and she says, but she just tries to not think about it too hard and to just enjoy it. And then I
Yeah.
thought, this is so weird because I've never really thought of her as just enjoying, being like the object of my affection
Yeah.
like and it just kind of seemed so weird afterwards because I was like here we have just acknowledged that we just find pleasure in this thing and
Yeah.
should it be deeper than this should it be like like I don't know
Yeah.
like it felt like I started thinking about love and like what does it mean to love like we think of love and unconditional love but isn't it just like finding pleasure in the thing isn't it
Yeah.
learning to like enjoy the thing is aren't those aspects like I always used to think that was using people. Like, well, not always. Once I learned to try to be good in relationships, I started
Yeah.
associating like finding pleasure from people as being like a warning sign to me that I was going to use this person to keep trying to tap into that pleasure.
I understand. Yeah. I think that's just back into the guilt. And I think this goes back to how we managed our parents. Is this how I get to get my mother's affection? Is this how I get my father from stop hitting me? Is this how I need to it's all that type of thing. And then when you associate intimacy with such distorted versions of family, and then when you try to rekindle that with an external variation of family, you think that you're using them just like from before. It's not the same, because this is something you discovered on your own. It wasn't really forced upon you. Parents are forced upon you. There's nothing you can do about it. So you better just forgive them and accept them for who they are, because you can't change them. If you try to change them, people often wall up or get defensive. And so it's, if you have this friend who happened to come into your life and they're giving you all these things, depending on whether you believe in spirituality or not, and the law of attraction. So if you sought this and worked for it on a subconscious level, it's going to come to you. This friend came to you because you sought her. It was bound to happen. And not all relationships have to be sexual, even though sex is quite romantic and intimate. And how do you really convey your love to someone other than maybe penetrating them and being as close as you possibly can be to them? It's very intimate, but then that doesn't always work. I've got some male friends that I love very, very much, but I'm not a homosexual. But I love them as deeply as I would love a lover. They are lovers, but they're not sexual. I would honestly call some of my male friends lovers, but I have no sexual interest in them whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It makes sense too. Like, why do we use the word lover in like a primarily sexual way?
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we have like plenty of history of, like David and Jonathan, or Alexander the Great and what's his name. But some of these people were lovers, but some of them weren't. But when I went to India, like several years ago, just kind of traveled to India, I noticed that dudes were like holding each other's hands like all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and in Africa too. It happens all over Africa, and it's just that you hold someone's hand because you love them, and it's intimate. You don't. Well, okay, I have quite a bit of demisexuality, but it's not when it comes to men. I don't get that tingle. It doesn't arouse me, but I feel very confident in that love, and it's real. And why complicate it with trying to dissect it, or vivisect it to suit norms or ideas outside of what's expected of us. If these boys or girls want to hold hands, it's innocent. They care for each other. They're best friends. It's that they're not thinking about sex. Obviously, it's not sexual.
Yeah, I agree. What do you mean by demisexual? I don't know that term.
Okay, well, demisexual means that you are aroused because you're in love with someone.
Okay.
So if you feel that love, that when you're deeply in love with someone, it makes you aroused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know why. I feel like my own sexual experience, it just seems so, and I don't kind of question it, because I'm totally satisfied, like with my
Mm-hmm.
sexual identity expression, like how my sexual identity finds expression. But it's been
Mm-hmm.
such this route that I really haven't like looked at it or tried to like understand it or explain it. It just happened to work out. So, like
Yeah,
after years of just whatever, it just like suddenly
yeah,
hit that like, oh, okay, this works. But I've never kind
yeah.
of like gotten back and tried to be like, hey, what happened here and what happened there and how did it end up here to where it works out?
Yeah, I guess it's the same thing for me. Everything is just kind of been intuitive for me. I have done a lot of research. I have done a lot of travel, and I am pretty experienced when it comes to things. But I excuse me. I do try to rely upon my intuition when it comes to matters of feelings. We do have five primary physical senses, but the sixth is intuition and emotion. And if you don't really have access to your emotions, then it's difficult to intuit your surroundings, and you would need to have someone teach that to you through role modeling, with like maybe my grandparents did, or maybe it was your friend that helped you gain this intuition and opened up your idea to what love is, or what the universe is, and the bonds that we share as a species, etc. I'm not sure how you gained your intuition, but how do you think you gained it?
So it's a good question, because I think like I would do things intuitively. I would think of them as being impulsive, like at the time. So
Okay.
let's say I decide to move to a new city or something, and it's a good city or whatever. It's a good experience. It's a good job or something, or a good educational program. But I might think of it as like, I couldn't really voice the reasons, for that logically. And so it must have been impulsive. So I think I sometimes would experience intuition, but as an impulse. And so I would kind of like distrust it a little bit, or I'd be kind of like, oh, maybe I should try to be less impulsive. I just thought of it as like a questionable thing, like a red flag.
Sure.
Without dismissing it. I'd still act on it, like largely because I was still kind of acting on a lot of impulses at the time. But the thing
Mm.
that kind of like clued me into like paying attention to it more is this thought experiment that my therapist came up with, which was to just like pretend that I was the only person that existed in the world. And then for any given question, like, what should I eat for lunch? And before I might be like, oh, I'll eat this because, I'll save this for that person, or I'll eat, I'll suggest we go to this restaurant because that's their favorite
Sorry.
or something. And so I instead, in this thought experiment, I would just like pretend there's nobody. And in this quiet space of just me, then I could like hear like my own kind of feelings, my own
Mhm.
hankerings, my own leanings, my own preferences in a way, because, as a psychopath, I don't know if you relate to this, but I felt like, and maybe kind of, as you say, growing up with parents where you're trying to, get the things that you need, like in weird ways, because they respond, to different stimuli, I guess, than normal parents would. I was just so hyper focused or hyper aware of other people's preferences, of other people's desires, of other people's fears, of other people's emotions, and
Yeah.
kind of like constantly thinking about what I might do and how it would affect others. Like that was very noisy for me, like very psychologically noisy to constantly be so aware of everybody else, that I had to have
Yeah.
this quiet space to start to
Yeah.
listen. And then I got better. And then I'd try to be like true to myself once I re-enter the world of noisiness. And then it was
Hmm.
just like by attrition. Is attrition addition? No, by addition.
Okay.
Attrition's
Yeah.
the opposite of addition. So by
Yeah.
addition, I would just layer, start to understand, and it would just become stronger to me, my intuition. But how did you learn intuition? I'm curious.
Um, uh, Drugs and meditation,
Okay.
probably. Yeah. And probably my grandparents, but let's I don't, and the occult. Um, so bringing this up, maybe this goes back into schizoid or schizotypalism, whatever we want to call it. But there's always been this thought exercise that I tend to use with like borderline type individuals to aid in the development of their ego and the recognition of their intuition.
When
Um,
you say
there,
ego, do you mean like sense of self or
yeah,
identity?
sense of self in relation to your body. The,
Okay.
the ego, the ego, the ego is in relation to the body, whereas the intuition is relates in relation to the soul.
Okay.
The soul is emotional, and the body is sensory. So your emotions they may be biochemical, but they also come from uh, extra dimensional source, and that's my belief. where you can sense things regardless of having a body. Once you have your orb of consciousness. But there's a ritual that was developed by the Greek mysteries cult, which was a woman's cult of the women who worshipped Demeter, and they're the same people who developed the musical scale that we use today, et cetera, et cetera. And their initiation rite was called the Dweller at the Threshold, in which it was exactly what you did, kind of. In which you go into your safe place where you're completely alone, and it's of your design. It smells the way you want it to smell. It looks the way you want it to look, and no one else is there, and it's safe. There's literally nothing that can harm you there, and there's a doorway or a threshold, and in between that doorway is you. You are in between you and that doorway. There's you in your perspective, and there's also you in between that doorway. And that you that you see is all of your shame, all of your guilt. It's your ugliness. It's your hatred. It's your shame. It's everything. And you are given a weapon in your hand. And what do you do with this weapon, and what is it? In order to pass through the doorway,
Like
what would you
what?
do, Amy?
What would I do?
I'm
Now
not.
that I
I'm not there.
yeah, now that I think that love is a technology, like
You
a spiritual
you got it.
technology.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
what it is. Your hands are your weapons of love, and you hug yourself, and
Yeah.
you bring your ego into yourself, and you become one, and then you're able to step through that doorway and speak to your intuition. So you pass. You absolutely pass. And this is a very helpful tool for those to understand the not the ego death, but the integration of the ego. You have to
Exactly.
you have to accept your ego in order to pass into your intuition. You can't kill your ego. It'll always come back. You have a body. The ego is like a demon, whereas the intuition is like an angel. The demon needs your body, and it tries its best, like a fucked up mother or a father who's trying their best, but they're like, oh, you got to eat well. Oh, you're fat. Oh, you're suck at school. You got to try harder. You got to do all this type of stuff, and it's just chat, 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 because it's trying its best. It doesn't hate you. It's not evil. It's really trying, but it's almost always wrong. And it's but the intuition doesn't give a fuck about your ego or your body, and the ego doesn't even know that the intuition exists. It's two different realms. Like I believe in reincarnation. I believe that I've had many different bodies. I've had past life experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And the intuition is just like, oh, this ego is just another blink of the eye. It's you're going to have another body soon enough anyway. So it's not going to help you. And usually once you have your intuition readily available for you, it's the quiet voice that speaks first, and it'll tell you what you need to know, and then it shuts up. It's got no more business with you, and then the ego is the one that speaks afterward and doesn't shut the fuck up.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's interesting because there's a Mormon scripture, well, like in Mormon theology, like the fall is to be put in this like uh lesser like physical vessel, like a vessel that can die,
Mhm.
a vessel that's not
Yeah,
eternal. Like we are eternal, like
yeah,
our soul, our spirit is
yeah.
eternal. And so there's a scripture that says the natural man is an enemy to God and has been since the fall of Adam and will and remain so unless you put off the natural man and submit and become as a child, submissive,
Wow.
meek, humble, yeah, willing to submit all things
Mm.
like a child doth submit to his father, is like a pretty close paraphrase of that scripture. Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's relative to when you go through like a DMT experience or a Salvia Divinorum experience. If you fight the DMT, if you fight the Salvia, you're gonna have a fucking horrible trip. You're going to hell. You literally are going to go to hell. But just submit to the fact that you are nothing, that you don't exist, that you're meaningless, and you're dead. And then once you submit to that idea, you are refilled with the life essence of when you were born, and it not only fixes your neurology, because like believe it or not, okay, again, I'm not a doctor, and half the time I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I do have bipolar, but I believe that the DMT experience changed the type 1 bipolar in me to type 2. I don't need medication. I don't need medication. I just need to eat well, exercise, sleep well, and have a regular amount of sex, and then I'm fine. I don't have the manic depressive episodes. I have hypomania time to time, but then I don't have the uncontrollable swings anymore. And I believe that DMT and electroconvulsive therapies have very similar parallels when it comes to this. The DMT just basically, it was kind of scary. Like I smoked. No, I didn't. No, this I did Yopo, which is in dimethyltryptamine and bufotenin, which strangely enough is the same active chemical in psychedelic frogs, but it exists within the Sebel, CEBIL seed, which is like a Brazilian rainforest plant or whatever. Together, I always overdose because I gain really high tolerance to everything. So I took this extremely high dose of Yopo. I was convulsing, had like seizures and vomiting all over the floor. And then when I woke up, I was like fucking fixed. Like I didn't have any anxiety. I didn't have any depression. And I didn't have to smoke weed anymore. I didn't need to drink, like all these types of things. Like I didn't have these chemical coping cravings anymore. Like it was really great. Is this relative to intuition and ego? Likely, yeah.
Well, so I have kind of like this theory, again, in Mormon theology, we talk about like there's a veil of forgetting from our previous life to this life, right?
Excuse me.
Because we
Makes
existed
sense.
yeah. And I think, and we mention it all the time, the veil of forgetting or whatever. And like, oh, did Jesus experience the veil of forgetting? Yes, he did, is like the Mormon theology. But then I started thinking, is the veil just this physical existence? I think I've mentioned this before in like one other video, where we're just so inundated with the physical experience of being in this particular body that we are, it's like being with a crying baby or whatever. You can't really think about deep thoughts or whatever when a baby's just constantly crying like right by you. You're just constantly thinking. So it's like what you say about the ego, the sense, the physical sensory part of our awareness, which is the one that speaks second but can't shut up, just talk. And so we constantly listen to that ego, and I feel like at the expense of listening to the intuition, I think is kind of the veil. And the veil then operates like you just like, maybe you're right that a baby then wouldn't have had as much time to forget. Like I think the baby does forgets about kind of these things as it embraces the new life of the physicality. But eventually we have to learn to put that off. Yeah.
Yeah. I have two questions now. One is in relation to your experience with infants, and two, this is in relation to reincarnation. The first question is, I'll say that up until recently, I was very triggered by infants. If they cried, I would have intrusive thoughts of murdering and burying them. I hated babies so much. I would think about strangling them or slicing their throats and things like that, just because they were the epitome of innocence and the epitome of vulnerability. I have experience of being abused and neglected and molested as an infant. So I saw my own vulnerability in them. So it was very difficult to see that they're crying, and I just wanted it to fucking stop. But now, and for whatever reason, I can actually listen to a baby and go, oh, that's cute. Like I don't know why, but it happened eventually. But I'm going to continue because I'm so tired. And you're good at following up. Secondarily, I've come to the conclusion that the ego resides in the physical body. But I'm going to ask, and then you can come back to the infant subject. What do you think the body of the intuition is? And it does have a body.
I mean, that is a good question. I've never thought that question. I've never been asked that question. And I too, like, here's kind of like, because I want to teach people to hear their intuition because it's so crucial to my own functioning. And I feel like if more people learned it, like it's one of the spiritual technologies, like with
Yeah.
love, that is really underutilized, like undertapped in
Yeah.
terms of like improving people's lives. Like I feel like more than the smartphone times a million are
Yeah.
these pieces of spiritual technology. I mean, I think that the intuition, like spiritually, like theologically, I guess I see the intuition as being kind of like there's like a Mormon theology, and I think mostly Christian theology, that there's like a Holy Ghost that like can embody you. And there's a Mormon prophet that said the thing
Mormons
about
know this, and you do have the answer. So
okay.
you're going to come to it.
Okay, hopefully, yeah, that the Holy Ghost can operate in your body to actually like change your physical like your physical body in a way, because the Holy Ghost is able to coexist in your body like in a way
No,
that like
yeah,
other places
Emmy, you're
can't.
off track. Sorry,
I'm
you're off
off
track.
track. Okay.
You're gonna know it as soon as I say it. Your intuition has the body of a star.
Well, one thing that that's a cool phrase. Well, one thing that I've been thinking about recently with the Holy Ghost is like Mormons also have a theology. All right, let me ask you another question. Let
The
me.
Mormons usually believe that after they pass away, that
Uh-huh.
there's a point in time where they will exist as their own universe or their own
Yes.
star, and it's true, and it's in relation to the amount of reincarnations you're going to have. Once your star passes away, you can no longer reincarnate, and that's relative to your master number. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in 9, then your body may be the last physical body that you experience as a star, and light travels extremely fast. So your intuition of your star can communicate to your other physical body quite easily. The internet exists. We're talking from East Coast to West Coast, immediately through fiber optic cables that use light, things like that. It's not so hard to imagine that your intuition of your star body communicates to your ego of your physical body instantaneously to give you snippets of wisdom or to help you with the lesson itself, when there is no real purpose to life other than to experience it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're saying there's a star body, and this
Yeah,
kind of, yeah, I was just reading in like the Christmas story, where the wise men say, "Oh, that we saw his star rising in the
exactly.
east or whatever." Yeah.
So you also know our Lord Jesus Christ has a star body, and that is our solar system. Our Lord is the sun.
That's his
That's his star.
star body. Interesting. So we're placed in his orbit. This is his
Yeah,
thing. Kind of makes sense.
yeah.
Mormons believe that like it wasn't God that created the earth. It was Jesus and Michael, the archangel Michael, who becomes Adam.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I currently my philosophy is that the creator is dead. The creator wasn't sentient in itself, but escaped the void, which is the cosmic egg, or the mother of everything, the nothingness. The
Yeah.
void, the cosmic vagina. And he achieved mass. The ego in itself, once it achieves mass, he was expelled from the cosmic egg in order to escape the mother again. he killed himself and exploded. And we are just like in many other theologies, the corpse of God is us, and we are the remainder. We are the corpse of God, but we developed many different iterations from that division. The universe itself started off as zero, and then zero divided itself into negative infinity. We are iterations of the self, because if there's only one entity, then it would be very lonely. So we create it, I, with, there's so many pronouns we could use. Divided ourselves in order to experience company. If you are the only one that existed, then it's only you and your ego. How do you create more partners? You divide. You continually divide, so that there's a degree of an illusion of separation. Yet there is no separation, and there is no space time. It's everything that we know is essentially an illusion. But that's the reality itself. And without this lie, without this forgetfulness, we wouldn't have sanity. So, we have to believe in the lie. And if we don't believe in the lie, then we don't exist.
Well, I don't think it's a lie. I think it's just a different perspective. It's not to see the whole perspective. It's to see just one part for now.
It's a lie in the sense that it's not what we. It's not what it really is. If I'm looking at you, but it's a facsimile of who you are. It's not M.E. Thomas. It is an image of M.E. Thomas, and it is an illusion. And there's filters on it. I'm perceiving you as how you want me to perceive you to be. It's not the true you. It's not your real name. There are aspects of you that are true. Your emotions are real. Like I can see who you are on an intuitive basis, but it's there. But that's okay. Just there's so many negative attributions to the word lie. But it's not always a bad thing. You can even within Buddhism, lying can be a loving thing. If I'm your God, why would I be so honest to you? If I can lie to you and make things better, just like there's a Buddhist passage where Buddha and one of his students were making a trek back to India so that he could die and be buried because he was on his deathbed, and it was like a 12-mile trek on foot. And while he was walking, there would be people passing by during the pilgrimage, and they would see Buddha as he was about to die, and they would tell him, "Well, you're almost there. It's just up ahead. Look, you'll be there soon." And then his student would be like looking at them and giving them bad looks, like, "Why are you lying?" And then this would go on and on and on, and then Buddha would look at him with like a loving smile, and then eventually it got to the point where they were there, but it took them months to get there. It didn't take just a day or two, and then Buddha told him, they lied to me, and I'm paraphrasing, but say they lied to me to give me hope. Hope is a loving lie.
Yeah. That is interesting. Hope is a loving lie. But how can we teach people? Do you have any thoughts about how to teach people intuition? How to get in touch with their intuition?
That's tricky. I don't want to offer psychonaut drug experiences as a way to do that, because that's irresponsible. I don't want to harm anybody, and harm reduction is obviously what's necessary for if you're going to undertake these experiences. So that's how I did it. The I guess the safe method would be, you know, dialectical behavioral therapies, where you are around other people who do have intuition, and you remove yourself from others who are toxic, or
Oh,
don't, or have low self awareness, or yeah. So
is that
you
what
would
DBT is? You're just like
yeah,
around kind of mentors?
yeah, you're around good role models.
Huh.
That's it. Yeah, you know, dialectical means like conversational or interpersonal. So you're, you know, as opposed to cognitive behavioral therapies, dialectical behavioral therapies is you shape your social environment.
Wow, that's really interesting because yeah, uh this person I know is borderline and has started DBT and seems so much better. It's
Yeah.
crazy how much better
So
she seems.
you're purging people from your life who do not benefit you, and you surround yourself with those that do.
Wow, it's so interesting because now this is like from 2020 maybe or something. I remember listening to this podcast on a road trip during the pandemic. And but it was talking about how like there was this public school in New York that was primarily African American, and then a bunch of white families decided, hey, let's just all go to this school and we'll start a French program and we'll just kind of like shape the school in our image a little bit. And then the pre-existing families though were like, hey, this is our school. We're not going to do like divert resources to this French program. And they're like, don't worry, we'll find donors. And they like, well, the donors should be supporting our programs, and but
Yeah,
so that was kind of like the controversy. But the fact that they came up with is that actually the schools do best like when they're desegregated, when there are
mhm.
like when there is that conflict there there are
Yeah,
those like
right.
like middle class, upper middle class kind of like honestly white families
Yeah,
like this. I hope I'm not like misciting this, and I can try to find the research about this or find the podcast. But it was interesting to think that like those are the schools that do better, is like the desegregated ones. We can cater to the needs of the individual, but at a certain point their needs need a shift, is kind of what they're
yeah,
saying.
yeah. God, I'm half triggered about all this stuff.
Okay.
I'm a no. It's okay, but I'll just touch on it. You know, I
we
identify
can we can move on. We don't have to.
as a conservative, you know, nationalist American. You know, I have an interracial marriage. You know, my wife is black. You know, and she's a liberal, and I'm very tolerant. But at the same instances, I'm not very tolerant of the widespread sensationalism of this quote racism agenda that's going on now. And you're right. And I personally thrive when there are many different people around me, because I don't want to be right. I don't want people to agree with me. You know, I want to be wrong. I want to learn. I want lessons. I want a group discussion, and that's all falling away, unfortunately. And I'm not some old curmudgeon, stamping my cane on the floor. It's sad. It saddens me that critical thinking is just not a part of the higher educational platform anymore. And you're in a university. Is there anybody within your university of San Diego that teach critical thinking, or praise critical thinking anymore?
Well, I mean, I teach paralegal students, right? And what I got used to as a law professor is that people kind of, so I should say that I'm not really part of a university, but as
Yeah.
people kind of come in and
Okay.
as a law professor, like the first 3 weeks, they were dummies, right? And then
Hmm.
about stuff, they were, I'd ask them kind of law questions and they just couldn't understand what was important and what wasn't. So it was just kind
Okay.
of like a lot of weird sharing of ideas that just was like not really tracking, what was the kind of critical, like
Sure.
kind of the inflection points. It wasn't really tracking like what was the thing that we were trying to like, what was the moving part, what was the leverage, what was the deciding factor. They couldn't
Mhm.
understand those types of things. But then after like a few weeks they can be taught it or whatever. And so I think of like law school, this is kind of a classic statement, is that law school teaches you how to think, or that think like a lawyer, you know, at least think like a lawyer. So it really is kind of this skill-based learning. Whereas like, I guess if you major in history, maybe you learn how to think like a historian a little bit, but it seems like you're also just learning a lot of substance. So like
Yeah.
there is like this skill, this aspect of skill-based that I think is being for some reason robbed from schools. And maybe it's because it's difficult to teach skills. Like I tell my students all the time about this. Like if I was teaching swimming lessons like I used to do, you know, and I just had the kids sit on the deck and was like, here's the physics of swimming. And then, you know, talk about it for 30 minutes, then be like, okay, see you tomorrow. Like nobody would think that's a good swimming lesson where they
Yeah.
never get
Wow.
wet. Yeah. You know, but it kind of like
Yeah.
highlights the distinction of like where some people kind of can trick themselves into thinking they're learning something, but if they're just learning about a skill, they're not really learning the skill. And thinking is a
It's like
skill.
meta. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's, yeah.
You have to practice it, but in order to practice it, it's a little bit like DBT. You have to be around somebody who's willing to say no. That is a
Yeah.
logical fallacy. Like that doesn't, you know, that doesn't follow. You're just associating things together that don't have like actually a logical connection. So it is hard for people, I think, to
Yeah.
see like the logical connection. I think psychopaths tend to be better at it because they're already
Yeah.
used to kind of looking underneath the surface to like the moving parts. But that can be
Yeah.
hard for people.
So this is kind of a joke, but it seems like lawyers would be good at escape rooms. You know, like so. So being that we constantly have to find alternative methods or out of box thinking. You know, it's good for, yeah, you're right. It's good for critical thinking and distrust. We don't really trust anyone, and sometimes we don't trust ourselves. You know,
Yes.
because I don't want to hurt this person, so I better shut up. Or this I'm feeling weak right now, and I want to harm this person because of my weakness. I better walk away. You know, just things like we don't trust. You know, if we're going to snap or outburst or whatever. You know, or like for me, I can generally see into someone and pick out their weaknesses and vulnerabilities rather quickly just by looking at their face or how they dress or anything like that, and I know exactly what to pick on, you know, and I usually save it until the right minute, but I don't always go there, you know, and I try not to.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I talked about this kind of with somebody else, like things kind of like basic economics. You kind of wish that those were prioritized over things like even social science or,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
learning
It's
about
so funny that you're saying that. So, man, I should give you. I think I took them with when I got access to the estate, but you know, I grabbed a lot of middle school and high school books from my grandparents, and
Okay.
that's something that they actually taught. You know, they taught check balancing, they taught economics and stuff in like 10th, 11th grade, everything like that, and you know, there's
It's
no,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
weird because like when I did teach high school for a year, and that's one thing they said that they wanted to be. They were like, we would rather learn how to do our taxes than do the stuff that you guys are teaching
yeah,
us.
or understand what credit scores are.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's just like you teach them kind of everything about except how the world really works or whatever. And then
Yeah.
people like that's why I kind of referenced that TikTok thing where it's like people are like, I haven't been able to make capitalism work for me. And I'm like, well, do we really teach kids how to operate within the system anymore?
Yeah,
Or are
it's
we kind
it's
of
not
like
it's not a
still,
benevolent system. It's not. It's definitely not a benevolent system. It's you know, like, and ever since No Child Left Behind, where like you can't even fail people anymore, like
Mhm.
it's ridiculous. You know, as long as your child isn't spitting and kicking you, you know, you just pass them.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody told me recently. Well, you know, I have a Down syndrome uncle and aunt who have like high school diplomas, you know,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like, I guess the one like speaks like 50 words of English. So, okay,
yeah,
you know, like, and then 50 words of sign language, including
yeah,
hippopotamus,
yeah,
which he showed me at the zoo. So, but you
yeah.
know,
My
it is
my
kind of,
Mhm.
interesting about and the pandemic too. I think a lot of people were just graduated because they were like, well, you're the age, and so you're just kind of gone. So yeah, it is kind of interesting. You wonder what people want people to be taught in schools, and I guess people who, listening to this, maybe they're like, well, we shouldn't teach people how to operate within capitalism because capitalism sucks. And are you doing people a favor
No,
by
this
making that
this
choice for
version
them?
this version of capitalism sucks. Our true version of capitalism that supports competition and small business and doesn't bail out huge organizations because they suck at capitalism. We don't have real this crony capitalism bullshit. Like we have like four now, maybe four major media companies. Like it's not capitalism. They aren't competing. They all work together. It's not capitalism. So if they're saying, oh, capitalism sucks, it's just because this isn't capitalism anymore. We lost it. There's no competition. There's no incentive to create a better product if there's only two corporations manufacturing the shitty ass product that got outsold to fucking China or whatever it was. Like it's not capitalism. We need to bring our businesses back to America, supply Americans with jobs and incentives to work, not just hey, sit on your ass, get your COVID bucks, whatever the fuck it is. It's there's no incentive to create skills, to be useful. If people want to TikTok their way for 20 cents a day, like hustle driving some food to the next door neighbor. Like people aren't even getting health insurance for that. Like there's our economy needs work, and we just don't have the workers. And the quote powers that be are doing their best to destroy capitalism as we know it, in order to create a new world order in which no one has property rights anymore, and that we just consume on a regular basis and don't learn, because a useful idiot is a better consumer than a conscientious objector.
Yeah. So I do have relatives who are socialist politically. They are like the most consumerist of
Yeah,
anybody I've met. It's like
yeah,
Amazon dropping them off packages every day. Now, that's not to say that that's every socialist or whatever, but it is kind of
yeah.
interesting to me that you know, guess what? I read a tweet recently that said something like this: the easiest people to market to are socialists.
Yeah, because they're not the ones that they rent. They don't have their own houses. They don't have chickens in their backyard. They're not gardening. They don't care about their families as much. They'd rather let the TV parent their children,
Yeah.
or their fucking smartphones.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. You did say something about infants. You wanted me to bring back it to infancy or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. So yeah, so you seem to have some agreement in maybe an earlier part of your life, which you felt a lot of animosity toward the innocents, especially infants. Did you ever have intrusive thoughts about killing them?
Not killing them, but I remember, well, I don't know, killing. I'll put a question on killing. Not that I can think of, remember right now, but I did have
Okay.
like this weird kind of urge as a child to like discipline them. So like one
Hmm.
time I was like kind of, we were kind of babysitting, but there were parents there, but they were like doing something else. They were like out in the yard doing yard work or something. So we had some neighbors' kids over and there was like a baby, and we would just be like, the baby has been bad. We have to spank the baby, and that kind of
Hmm.
became the weird fixation or whatever. I have like a very vivid memory of being like, however
Yeah.
old I was, 6 or something, and thinking, yeah, we have to. And then, not bad spanks, but just like every 5 minutes, okay, this baby gets spanked. Now that seems crazy to me now, but like, I
Yeah.
guess when I was 6, that spanking was a thing, so it wasn't like we
Yeah.
were trying to physically abuse the baby. It was that we were like, this baby has been bad, but the
Yeah.
baby's not bad. There was nothing the baby was, and the baby's too young to spank, but it
Yeah.
was like I did not have a concept of either of those two concepts, that either both that the baby was not bad, baby was fine and innocent,
Yeah.
and that the baby doesn't understand spanking. I was just like,
Right.
that's just what we have to do, bad and then spank.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Did were you spanked a lot?
it's hard to say a lot, but one time, and I talk about this in the book, one time, like with a belt so bad that there were like welts, like
Yeah.
bruises.
Hmm. It's interesting when sexual and physical assault becomes intimacy as your childhood, and then you relive it upon your siblings and friends and things like that. And even you don't even know what violence and sex is.
Right. Yeah, you don't understand the concepts. You're like, this is
You have
just
no idea you're being violent. You have no fucking clue you're being violent. It's so weird. People don't get it, but you don't think that you're hurting people. You don't know you're harming them. Like, and it doesn't come up till later. And then like the consequences kind of drop, and you're like, oh, that was I bad?
yeah. Yeah, that is really interesting. So you also had like bad thoughts about babies, like just because they
Mhm.
reflect this innocence.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I just have kind of come to the realization in the past couple of weeks that like what we mean by trigger is like the situation. Let's say I'm triggered by a loud noise,
Hmm.
like fireworks. Then what triggering means is that I just now associate it with something that's happened before. My feelings about something
Absolutely.
else, like I was in
And
Vietnam or something.
yeah.
Yeah. Like
And
I didn't understand the word trigger.
triggering, yeah, triggering has some element of dissociation to it,
Okay.
like escape.
But it's interesting to think like you're triggered and other people, I guess, kind of, and maybe they are working through it and they're trying not to be triggered or something. You're triggered. Uh, I don't know. It means that there's something inside you. And I think sometimes people are just they think that like this is always bad. This is always bad when this happens. And maybe it's not always bad when, like what would be a good example? You like show kind of like racism in a show or something and they say this is
Yeah.
triggering.
Yeah.
We should never show it or something. I don't know. I don't know that we have like opinions about that, but to think of triggering, like triggering is inherently subjective because it relies on the experiences that you've had you're
Yeah.
as a person, and there's certain experiences that can be generalized. Everybody's experienced violence, probably, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Everybody's
I guess,
experienced love.
yeah. When it comes to media, I guess when I'm in a compromised state, I get triggered when I'm being played for a fool, or if I'm being propagandized in media, where maybe the racial demographic of a film is being changed for to suit mainstream audiences, or or if conservative people are being made fun of, or being like being the butt of a joke on mainstream platforms or things like that. It feels like bullying,
Yeah.
and I'm not one to raise a Nazi flag, or anything like that. But I just it's offensive, and it's hard to find multi multifaceted media framework where everyone has a say, uh, everyone's equal, and that's why I would like, I wouldn't mind watching like a liberal minded. Here comes back to two, conflict, like a liberal minded show, and then watch a conservative minded show. But
Yeah.
it seems like at the moment everything's being pushed into, if you're not liberal, then you shouldn't think,
Yeah.
like you don't you're not relevant. You need to be pushed down to the ground. Shut the fuck up. You're a racist. You're white. You shouldn't have an opinion. Like you're critical of this black person or this Jew. Then all of a sudden, you're a racist. Like these people are, carte blanche. You're persona non grata. Like it's know your place, know your role.
Yeah. Two thoughts about this. So, like, I have a friend who won't watch animal movies, she says, because they're always manipulative.
Hmm.
Like Old Yeller, Lassie, or whatever. She's just like, no, they're just trying to like manipulate your emotions. And it's like, really
Yeah.
exploitative, she feels, right? So the second
like
thing
uh,
is,
like nonprofit commercials, like
yeah,
ASPCA.
exactly. In the arms of, yeah.
Yeah, it's fuck that shit.
So the other one is that I'll say a relative. I have a relative who was just talking to me recently. We were just kind of talking about the pandemic, how things have shifted, about people's understandings. And, some people feel less passionately, and some people still feel just as passionately about whatever their things. But one of the things she commented about was people said that it was racist, made an argument that it was racist to reopen the schools, during the pandemic after the vaccine came out. And she
It's
was
like
like, that was
the
the
new,
opposite. It was racist
yeah.
to keep them closed. Yeah. And
It's
so
the
it's,
new fucking red scare, man. It's just
yeah,
the
like
new
you
red.
just
It's
call
just the
things
new red.
racist and people are
Yeah,
like, oh, dang it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. There was something else about that. I forget. Oh, well.
It's
Well,
so interesting. Like, and people end up supporting and protecting people who are racist. Like if you think that white people are bad, that then you must be a racist. Or if you use Islam to abuse women, then you must be a sexist. But you can't say those things. Or if you use the Holocaust for sympathy, then you must be an exploitative individual.
yeah, that's the worst. I've thought. Yeah, like
you
the
know,
who was it? She was in the Mandalorian, Gina Carano. I was like, Gina
yeah,
Carano's statement, I don't see the anti-Semitism, guys.
yeah.
Like,
Like I'm not trying to kill. I'm not trying to kill you. I'm not trying to stop you from your freedoms. I will support you if you don't have a shirt on your back. I'll give you mine. But don't find yourself superior or vulnerably narcissist so that you think that you deserve more than another human being. Like you
yeah.
can't. I'm not. Yeah, I've had a fucked up life, but I'm not asking for more than you.
Hmm. And it is interesting because, like, for whatever reason, I think liberalism used to equate to tolerance, but
Yeah.
now I see like
It's
the
fascism.
craziest stuff. Yeah, from the liberals. I mean, I see crazy stuff from like a lot of people,
Yeah.
but like this somebody was kind of just justifying, man, what was it about? Like it was like taking cancel culture like a little further than normal or something. They were like, no, this person doesn't deserve to live anymore for like whatever
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
violation of like etiquette was that they did,
Right.
social etiquette. I was like,
Or
wow,
like
very
death threats.
dehumanizing.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
death threats to Donald Trump or like normalized things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And people are kind of like support that, like like the ends justify the means. Like it's fine to dehumanize people as long as we're ultimately trying to humanize people. I'm like, you guys, this how does this make
No.
any sense?
Why can't you just love them and try to learn who they are?
Yes, love is a spiritual technology. I agree. So there was like I'm watching a show. I'll not say the show. People will recognize it or not recognize it. Uh, and they kind of they explore this a little bit where they say, okay, you're in an oppressive regime, and now there's a revolution that's overthrown the oppressive regime, and they show the revolutionaries though as being just as oppressive as the oppressive regime that they overthrew. And they said, we think that we have like very good historical support for this, that this is frequently what happens. That as people are like, okay, we're going to overthrow this repressive regime, they become just as repressive, or they've always been just as oppressive and repressive as the thing
Mhm.
before. And they kind of cite the French Revolution and like some other kind of like revolutions, I think Russian revolution, the Chinese, the Cultural Revolution, or the Cambodian,
Mhm. Yeah. Come
like
on.
Khmer
Yeah.
Rouge.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of good examples, and people I don't think are scared enough about that. That like if you start justifying dehumanizing and
Yeah.
treating your fellow human beings like very poorly, like
Yeah.
if you start justifying that, then it will continue that way. You'll be surprised
People
how
don't
badly.
realize that Hitler was actually a liberal. People don't realize it. He was an animal rights activist, a vegan. He killed or punished his soldiers for striking dogs. That's liberalism can eventually swing into fascism. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh man, and I do want to learn about the Spanish Civil War because I just watched another movie, Almodovar, Pedro Almodovar. I forget what it was called, Switching Places or
Mm.
something, where they kind of reference it. And he has like this 20-minute like place where Penelope Cruz goes off on like the revolutionaries and like how terrible they were. And they were just like indiscriminately killing people. But it
Yeah.
is so tricky. It's hard because I feel like people memory hold these things so hard, kind of like the pandemic. People advocated for all sorts of weird, like, civil liberties restrictions.
Yeah.
Uh, and they don't seem to kind of like be reckoning with that at all. Like, was there actually the evidence to
Yeah.
support some of these choices you made and forced on other
Right.
people?
Right. So why? Okay. So how come people again don't have any critical thinking, and it's obvious even within the mainstream media that the coronavirus was funded by America and developed in China. That there was some type of mistake in which someone who was developing the virus for gain of fund research for biological warfare, they went to a fish market to buy food for their family, and then they fucked up. And these people should be held responsible for this, yet everyone's just like, oh, just take the vaccine and read the news, and do what they tell me. Like, what the fuck, who do we go to gain reparations for this crime against humanity? It was meant to be a weapon, and it was effective. Not only that, it was a psychological warfare tactic to gain world government through the World Health Organization to provide directives for every single country to see if world government could work, and on top of that, maybe even create a vaccine that could depopulate the world for the elderly and the sick. Because the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates, or Bill, it used to be Melinda Gates Foundation. Their primary objectives were increasing vaccination, depopulation, removing property rights, all these types of things to go forward toward the new world order, one world government, getting rid of borders, monoculturalism, one world currency, things like this. And this is kind of maybe getting a little bit off topic, but maybe not too much. I know you're maybe a little bit familiar with maybe Werner von Braun, the NASA director who used to be he developed the V2 missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles. He on his deathbed supposedly told his daughter that the plans would be different variations of false flag operations, ultimately ending in a false flag alien invasion, in which aliens invaded the world, decimated the world population, and then a new world order government would start from that. But ultimately, it would be man-made drones that were attacking the world. So that's probably what's going to be happening next after this coronavirus within our lifetime.
I do agree that something crazy is going to happen within our lifetime. I do think there's like a lot of crazy things. And I think kind of another thing about this TV show, which I will not, well, I will name a TV show. Okay, so I'm watching
Okay.
The Last of Us.
Yeah. Okay.
The Last of Us. And it's like a really good kind of look, kind of the same way that I guess the fragility of our government, as to that aspect, what is it, Handmaid's Tale was kind of a good look about like, actually could the United States government be overthrown? Probably, if you like whatever the
It already
laws of
was.
Congress. Yeah.
Yeah, our government doesn't really exist. Our president, quote, he's not the real president, by the way. They retrofitted the White House so that there's a cue card room. He doesn't speak his own words. He doesn't speak his own mind. He just signs a bunch of papers. They try to help him so he's not touching everyone's kids. He's complete. Oh my God, what a disgusting person. Sorry. But why did he get voted in? The Democratic National Congress, they screwed Bernie again. They're like, oh nope, you can't have it. And he quote dropped out again. He was the best moron for the job. So that he didn't have to work, he didn't have to think. Whether you like Trump or not, I'm neutral on the guy. I don't care one way or the other. But he spoke his own mind. Did he probably touch kids too? Probably. You know what I mean? But he spoke his own mind. He gained a lot of respect for the UN. Was engaged in his tactics where we didn't have any warfare throughout the world. It was nice. Our money was good. You could go anywhere and spend the American dollar and feel like when you have a job at home that you can travel and have a nice vacation. It was nice. And what the fuck's going on? You can't speak your mind now. Your money's not worth shit. Oh God, it's terrible. And that it's not an accident. It's definitely not a fucking accident.
Yeah, and so this is what I think, this like TV show kind of gets at, is that like everybody and this is kind of something that there's like a really famous Mormon talk called Beware of Pride, and it talks about like how people will intentionally pit people against each other to themselves get gain, right? Or they see good things as a threat to their own power. So he kind of quotes this. He says that Jesus's appearance was a threat to the Sanhedrin, the Jewish leaders at the time. And so they couldn't allow Jesus to be whatever, they had to kill him because he was like a threat to their own power. So even if Jesus had even if he was their Messiah, they weren't like going to accept it because they were like so power structured to saying, well, in order to support our own dominance and power and authority, we have to kind of just eliminate this. And so I think that's what this TV show, The Last of Us, really gets into, is that you kind of think that people, I don't know, I think it is very predictable that people will act, if they're in a position of power, they will act in a way to retain that power and increase that power. They won't necessarily and probably won't act in a way to benefit others. And I think that's like a basic truth that people seem to kind of like ignore a lot. And kind of like and sweep it under the rug and be like, that's a conspiracy theory or something. Whereas I think that there's another Mormon scripture that says, oh man, maybe it's not a Mormon scripture, maybe it's just like a quote or something, that like, once somebody has authority, they just seek to maintain and increase that authority over others. That's just like the natural kind of like urge of mankind. And it is the natural man, and it's something that we should push off and not do, and instead use the technologies of love, spiritual technologies of intuition, etc. But unfortunately, most people don't do that. And you see it, you can see it depicted in the musicals of Stephen Sondheim. There's the steward in Into the Woods who's just exercising his authority in these arbitrary ways. And it's like, if you don't think that happens, like police don't exercise their authority in arbitrary ways, that other government agencies
Color
don't.
of law,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we are kind of getting a little bit long in the tooth here. Should we try to wrap things up a little bit?
Yeah, I probably need to go to sleep.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I hope you get better. And thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Nice chat. Yeah.
Are there other things that you want to say before we wrap up?
No, we'll chat later.
Okay, sounds good. I hope you feel better. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, M.E. All right. Have a nice day.
You too.